Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show. I'm so excited to have Alison Beder Solway on with us today. And the title of today's show is The Miles We Run, Insights on Surrogacy and Marathon Running. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Amy. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I'd like to share with our listeners a little bit about you. Alison Beder Solway is a fitness expert, author, and mother of four with over 15 years of experience in the fitness industry. Alison specializes in helping women over 40 build strength and resilience, understanding firsthand how the body changes over time. Her personal journey of expanding her family through surrogacy 25 years ago and training for the New York City Marathon has shaped her approach to fitness and life. In her memoir, The Miles We Run, Alison reflects on the transformative power of hope, perseverance, and overcoming challenges. She's also the founder of ABS Fitness, an online platform dedicated to women's health and empowerment. Welcome again, Alison.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Amy. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you for coming on and sharing your story. In your memoir, The Miles We Run, you intertwine your journey with surrogacy and marathon training. And if you know a little bit about me, I always tell my patients, you have to be able to run a 10-minute mile in order to even think about having a pregnancy. So I love that you reached out to me about your book. I'm so happy to have you here. So I just wanted to learn more about how did you come to see these two experiences as connected? And what was the inspiration behind crafting your memoir?
I just want to express my gratitude to you that you have provided such a wonderful platform to promote fertility awareness. The work you do is so important and so critical. So thank you. I wish my old self had had somebody like you back when we first started surrogacy. With that being said, I hope that my book contributes to these conversations. I hope that it instills hope to people who are going through infertility or surrogacy. You know, I know surrogacy and marathon running at the outset look like totally different endeavors. And surrogacy about another woman carrying your baby for you and running a marathon is conquering 26.2 miles. They have a lot of shared qualities. And it's those shared qualities that showed me the duality of the two endeavors: perseverance, discipline, hope, resilience, patience. And that's why I was able to use the metaphor of training for my marathon. I was able to weave it through my surrogacy experience.
I share with my patients, I want you to be able to run a 10-minute mile in order to carry a pregnancy, but same goes true for just being a parent. You want to be in the best of your life. So whether someone else is carrying a pregnancy for you or you're carrying yourself, being strong, being healthy is really important.
That's very true. The inspiration behind crafting my book was threefold. I journaled our entire experience. And initially, that first journal was set out to be more like a keepsake for our unborn child, hopefully one day, that they could look back and see how they came into existence and how much we loved them before their conception. One journal turned into two, turned into three, and I wrote this stream of consciousness over 4 years, filled three substantial journals. And when I closed that third book, I had a beautiful family and I was in the throes of raising four young children. And I knew I had a story, but it wasn't the time to write it. So I closed those books and I put them away. And then the second component is when I embarked on my 9-month training regimen, which there is no pun intended, but I recognize now 9-month training, 9 months to have a baby. It's funny how things sometimes shape out like that. But like we spoke of just earlier, While I was training, I realized I needed those same qualities to get through and propel me to the finish line that I had to bring about in surrogacy for training for the marathon. And I thought it was a beautiful way to find a metaphor that could relate so differently to what we are experiencing from surrogacy, but my personal experience with training for and completing the New York Marathon. And it fit together. And then finally, I think this is the most important reason as to why I wrote my book is I wanted to inspire hope. And I learned that hope is a brave and deliberate decision. And my book aims to inspire others. Doesn't matter if you're going through infertility, doesn't matter if you're going through surrogacy, doesn't matter if you're looking to run a marathon, but to read through my story and actually reflect on their own miles and find the strength within their narrative that maybe they haven't reflected on and see those same aspects of resilience and perseverance and strength that they had to draw on in their own lives.
Yeah.
And that's how the book came together.
Love that. I almost feel like you should have a run club, the Miles We Run club, where women who are starting their surrogacy journey, as their surrogate is pregnant, hopefully, then even if they're not, but even when they start off on their journey, they have something to focus on, something that will make them stronger and healthier. And having you as a coach, have you ever thought about that?
A good question. I haven't thought about that. Running such a introspective sport. You might run with other groups and be part, like I run with my siblings every week. And even though the three of us are physically together, mentally it's very internal. It's a shared experience, yet the mental fortitude required to get through a run is very solo. And although I think it's great to get together that you could support a group, I think it would almost be better to get a support group together and I don't know whether it's do strength training or something that you're not so separate. You know what I mean?
You're right. So it could be like a support group, a schedule, like today you're going to run this many miles. You know how like, yeah,
100%.
like,
100%. Yes,
really.
yes, yes,
And I can't
yes.
run with my sister. Whenever I run with my sister, she always makes fun of me. And she's like,
Oh,
"Oh,
that's so
you
funny.
call that running?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my version of running."
You're running. That's all that matters. You're doing it. It doesn't matter how you look when you're doing it. You're
Very,
doing it.
we can't make it much more than past like 2 minutes. Tell me more about the connection between the mental and physical endurance, because you have to qualify for the New York Marathon, don't you?
The New York Marathon, you don't. I knew if I was going to run a marathon, it was going to be the New York Marathon. The New York Marathon's larger than life. Even though you hear about it, you never really think that the entire city and every single borough is going to come out and support these runners, but they actually do. It's literally electrifying. So, as hard as every mile, that progresses, every mile gets progressively harder. The cheers and the camaraderie amongst the crowds is just so wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. I don't think my pace is fast enough that I would qualify for any marathon. And it was such a humid day in November in New York. It was unseasonably hot. So that even like pushed mine and so many of our paces like back a half an hour, 45 minutes for sure. But back to your question, surrogacy was an emotional marathon that really helped me develop a mental strength that I don't know where it came from, to be perfectly honest. Our experience was grueling and it taught me to have to let go of control. Because as I know you know, and your patients and anybody undergoing any type of fertility issues, is there is very little semblance of control that you have. and I'm a type A and I like to control things. And adding surrogacy into the mix, you're also relinquishing control of carrying that child for 9 months. So the mental fortitude that I needed to develop to allow myself to let go and trust in the process was really challenging for me. Being told I couldn't have any more children was an experience that was laden for me with shame and grief. I'll get emotional. uh, really hard when you want something more than anything and someone's told you that you can't have it anymore.
Right.
Um, Working with different gestational carriers and the challenges that working with each of them brought about, and just trusting them and getting to know them, and implanting an embryo when you've only been talking to them for 2-3 months. It's not a big window to get to know somebody, to entrust them with the most important part of yourself. We faced so many failed IVF attempts, faced a twin miscarriage, and we had to make the difficult decision of fetal reduction. So I was front row center to mental strength during our surrogacy experience.
And it sounds like a lot of self-advocacy as well.
Oh my gosh.
Telling you no and you can't, you have to dig deep and really believe in yourself when other people don't.
Absolutely. And where I think a lot of people think marathon training or running is more physical, it's actually not. It's like a mental negotiation. So, yes, your body is being physical, but it is a mental fortitude that requires you to just focus on every step and just mentally tell yourself, I can do hard things, and one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. So, what definitely encompassed a physical feat, the only way you got through that physical was by drawing in the mental. So, the two are intrinsically linked, both needing one for the other.
What advice would you give to others who are navigating challenges and feeling pressured by societal or institutional expectations?
It's exactly that you just said. It's educate and advocate. I can't express how important that is. I went into surrogacy completely blind. I was focused on the outcome. I wanted to have another baby, and that is really all I cared about. I wish I had taken the time to focus on the process and not solely the outcome. And education is so important, being an active participant in your care, and not just fertility, in healthcare across the board. Be engaged, be curious, ask questions, be part of your healthcare. Learn about the different drugs, learn about the different protocols, procedures, technologies. You want to really be an active participant. It took me 2 years to kind of lift that fog of ignorance and become that engaged advocate that I wish I had been 2 years prior. So it would have saved us a lot of time, and it definitely would have saved us a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, keeping copies of your medical records, reviewing them, asking questions, making sure that you're not just, like you said, a passive participant. And oftentimes people don't start being active participants until something goes wrong because they just feel like everyone's looking out for them, that they've reviewed the records, they know their whole story. But we live in a world where hospitals aren't connected to one another. And it's important for you to be the owner and CEO of your own medical information.
Absolutely. So many clinics will throw out stats. And I remember hearing about live, pregnancy rates. If the pregnancy rate was, 95%, oh, that's the clinic that I want to work with. But I had no idea that I should be focusing on the live birth rate, not the pregnancy rate. And I can look back and reflect on my ignorance or naivety, but when I was in the midst of it, when I was in the throes of it, All you want is a baby.
Right. And you've mentioned that finding strength in your most vulnerable moments was key to your journey. Can you share a moment from your surrogacy experience where this became especially true for you?
If I think of one particular part that made me feel my most vulnerable was when Aiden was born. And Aiden was our first child that we had through a surrogate. And when the nurse carried him to the little isolette and started doing his measurements and weighing him, and I was watching this happen in front of me, but I felt almost this surrealness around the entire scenario. And it was almost like an out of body experience where I started to worry, I'm going to get emotional, that I was dreaming because I had wanted this so badly. And I took my right hand and I pinched my left arm really hard. And I left a bruise actually. And the nurse who was doing these tests on Aiden looked at me and and I mean, really looked at me. And with this like maternal voice, she says to me, "Sweetheart, he is real and he is yours." And it's like I had on my right shoulder this bubble of doubt and fear living there. And as soon as she said that, it vanished. They vanished. And I felt grounded. And I realized that what I had worked and wanted so hard for had come alive, had come to fruition. And it was the most vulnerable moment because I was so scared that it wasn't real. And it was the most vulnerable moment because it was real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then I imagine that there were other times of despair, and you touch on in your memoir on self belief and hope. And what helped you maintain both things, self belief and hope, when the process felt overwhelming?
Writing this book was a really cathartic experience for me. When I took out my journals and I started to reread them, I realized that I never looked back. Literally, I never looked back. I moved forward with my family. I never really processed anything that we had went through, that I had experienced, that I had lost, that I had endured, and it helped me recognize how resilience is like a muscle that through challenge it grows and gets stronger. And through perseverance and discipline, that is what fuels it. And that's exactly what I did. I persevered and I was very disciplined in not giving up because there were so many times that I could have, but I just wasn't willing to forego a dream that I so desperately wanted, even when there were certain times throughout our journey which were just unbearable.
Most of our listeners have gone through a fertility journey, so they can relate to a lot of what you say, but they're not 25 years out from their journey like you are. And still, 25 years later, we still tear up, we still cry, we're still so emotional.
I can't even tell you how many times I've read my book and I still cry. I still cry. I'm crying talking to you. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to about it. I still cry. I had fear and doubt on one shoulder. I had hope and determination on the other, and my belief that I could do hard things. And usually, hope and determination overruled fear and doubt. Usually, not always, but a lot of the time. And I was blessed to have a partner in my husband who every single day would remind me it's not if, it's when. I had my daughter that I was able and so privileged to carry on my own, even though I had a very challenging pregnancy. And she just was such a healing balm for me. Having her, like, she saved me in many, many ways. And I was very blessed to have, a loving, supportive family. And I recognize the privilege of my umbrella of support. Not everybody has that. So I recognize how lucky I am and how lucky I was back going through surrogacy.
Yeah, I use that word a lot because patients think, what I can't wave a wand and fix everything. Sometimes we're lucky and things work out, and sometimes we're not. But certainly when it works out, I certainly feel very lucky. How do you hope the miles we run will resonate with readers, whether they're embarking on surrogacy or running a marathon?
So, for those going through surrogacy, I genuinely want this book to offer hope. It's a hard road. I want it to be a hopeful one for them. For runners thinking about conquering a marathon, they need to know it's hard as F. It is one of the hardest physical and mental challenges I've ever experienced. But crossing that finish line on that humid November day, I was so beyond proud of myself. So it was worth the effort. And if I look at the big picture, because most people who have read my book, who will read my book, aren't going to go through surrogacy or haven't been through surrogacy, aren't going to run a marathon, have no intention of running a marathon, but the story will resonate with them because I hope that through my story, they can see their own, they can recognize their strength through their narrative because I ask so many questions and I feel like I take the reader on a journey. And it's my story, but I hope they're able to reflect inwards on their own. I have a friend who, when we were initially going through surrogacy, she is one of the only people I know who've read the book who actually used a surrogate. And she had an advanced reader copy. And years ago, she was in a tragic accident and suffered a massive stroke as a result. And she has undergone extensive physio and rehab and still does. And I met her for coffee after she finished the book. And the first thing she said to me was, "Thank you." And I thought she was thanking me because I had given a voice to surrogacy. I had spoken of my story, made it less stigma around it. And she's like, "No." She's like, "It had nothing to do with surrogacy." She's like, "I needed a little hope and I needed a little inspiration." She was undergoing a new type of physical therapy. And I started, like I am now with you,
Yeah.
bawling my eyes out because I was like, wow, I've achieved my goal. And here's someone who actually used a surrogate and got so much more out of my story and out of my book than this surrogacy experience. So that's my goal.
Yeah. And I think that even surrogates could benefit from reading your book. They'll understand what the intended parents have been through and go through while they're carrying the pregnancy. So they'll understand the other side maybe a little bit more.
I hope so. I hope so. It's important, it's a partnership. And I speak of that in the book. I speak of the partnership between the carrier and the intended parent. It's a very unique relationship.
So have your kids read your book yet?
Yes, all four of my kids have read the book, and all four were instrumental early days with their feedback and their critical commentary. And I incorporated all those suggestions in the early drafts. I think they were quite amazed. I've always been a writer, but this is my debut book, and I think they were pleasantly impressed, which is a hard thing to do with four kids, you know?
And then where can we find your book?
The book is available on all major platforms: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Indigo in Canada, Kindle, Apple Books. It's in print in most bookstores. And the best way to find out where it's available is check out my website, themileswerun.com, and you can stay updated that way.
Excellent. And then can people work with you one-on-one?
So, on the fitness side, absolutely. I have an online platform geared to getting women strong, as you spoke at the beginning so eloquently. absfitness.ca is exactly that: effective, challenging workouts to help women improve their physical fitness. And as you know, as a woman and as a medical practitioner, how important it is for us to strength train. So, absfitness.ca on the fitness side. If somebody wanted to talk to me about surrogacy or infertility, they can absolutely send me a note on themileswerun.com, because I'm happy to engage. I'm happy to help in any way I can. They just need to fill out the contact sheet, and that comes directly to me, and I'd be happy to speak with them.
Thanks, Alison. Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
I just want to thank you so much for having me. I think, as I said at the beginning, these conversations are so important. And I just want your audience to remember that hope is a brave and deliberate decision.
I feel like we should have that on a t-shirt, a hat. And thank you, Alison, for sharing your story with us and for writing your book. It's going to help so many women and families. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy.